Slack for that. All right, we're going to start. So I am, while this is going on, you can say where you're from. You can post questions. I am breaking this up into 3 parts so that we can do questions in the middle, or at least I know how to direct the flow of things and maybe take a break and address them. And by the way, some of the things people brought up, I haven't addressed in these slides, which is fine. I can address them towards the end too. Presentation is web forms for everyone. And I'm going to move this here so I look right at the screen. So my name's Jacob Rockowitz. I'm known as Jay Rockowitz on the web. I'm a Drupal developer and software architect. I built and maintain the Webform module for Drupal 8. And I like to just start off with, what is the Webform module? The Webform module is a powerful and flexible open source form builder and submission manager for Drupal 8. And in this presentation, I'm trying to target 3 audiences: site owners, site builders, and Drupal developers. And for site owners, it's kind of the question, why should you use the Webform module? What's the benefits? What's the use case? For site builders, it's really, how do you build awesome web forms? And then for Drupal developers, it's, what can you do with the Webform module? How can you customize it? How do you really understand how the APIs work, the plugins, the hooks? How do you get the most out of it? And throughout each one of these audiences, and I'm talking about, I'm going to come back to site owners kind of toward the end and say, hey, site owners should be aware of this feature. But I want to emphasize, my goal is to answer your questions. And I also like to just show you my favorite web form things. There's a lot of features and functionality, so I'm not going to go through everything. I'm going to go through what I like. So for site owners, why should you use the Webform module? The Webform module allows you to build any type of form or application. And the use case is that you build a form, you could copy a template, publish the form as a page, note, or block, collect form submissions, send out confirmation and notification emails, review the results, and then you can distribute those results by downloading a CSV or remote posting them to a third-party server. And I like to break the use case down to these 3 steps, which is you're building a form, you're collecting data, and you're distributing data. And we'll keep coming through those steps as we're going through the presentation. And even with a very basic demo, I'll walk through those steps for you. This is a clean install of the Webform module. There's a default contact form. People are pretty familiar with it. And for the demo, I'm just going to add a company element, your company. I'm going to go into the builder and add an element called company, which is a text field. There are a lot of options to the Webform module, but you really just need to enter a title to start an input. And I'm just going to hit save. The company gets added to the bottom. I'm going to click on view. There's the company. There's a slight mistake here where it should be required. It should say your company and be more up at the top. You can definitely do that in the form builder by dragging things up and down. But for this demo, I'm going to switch over to the source mode very quickly and just show that you can edit the source code behind the web form. I'm going to change the label to your company, and I want it required, so I'm going to copy the property from another element, and I'm going to hit save. So now that we've built a form, we're going to test it. I'm going to switch over to the test tab, which will give you a preview of the form, but we'll fill it out with dummy data. So it makes it really easy. I'm going to make this a little bigger for everyone to just fill out the form quickly. I'm going to hit send. So we've switched from the build and we've just collected a piece of data and we've displayed a confirmation your message has been sent. And I'm going to click back. And now we can review those results. So if I click on results, we're going to get to see the single submission that came through. You can view it here. You can actually get a table view to just see all the data for very long forms. It's useful. You can even resend the email. I'm not going to go there right now, but I'm going to go back up to the results. You can flag things. You can lock submissions. But now that we've reviewed the results, let's distribute them. Let's download them. So we're going to switch over to the download tab. And in here, I'm going to generate an HTML table, which could be open in Excel, but I'm not. You can customize a lot of aspects of the table. What column headers are going to be used, what columns are being exported. By default, most things are exported. You don't really need the web form column because you know what web form you're pulling it from. But for the demo, I'm not going to download it in Open Excel, but I'm just going to show it on screen and click download, and you get this nice HTML table, which opens in Excel, and you could stylize this even by extending this plugin that's generating this table. I'm going to click back. just to get to the starting point. And now we're going to keep going. So that source editor, the YAML source mode, is definitely one of my favorite things about the Webform module. It was one of the first features added to the Webform module, and what it does is allows you to add everything at once. And for site owners, you might not think this is interesting, but what's powerful about it is you can edit all the labels at one time. You can see exactly what's going on with the form. And for advanced users that actually understand how Drupal's form API works, they can just type out a form very quickly, or you can cut and paste snippets from one form to another. Another feature that I like is that large table of results, it's very easy to customize by just clicking the Customize button, and it gives you just the ability to select the columns you want to display. And basically, I'm just displaying the data, your name, email, and maybe I'm going to go back and say I want to know the user that submitted it. And you can control, the sorting and how many item results are displayed per page, and then hit Save. It just simplifies this table. It's very easy for non-technical users to kind of create a custom display for themselves. Now you can use the Views module to completely override this and customize every aspect of this and create your own completely unique display. And lastly, I skipped over this little great button at the bottom, which allows you to download a submission as a PDF. Convert all that information to a PDF document that's using the entity print module, and you have full control over that PDF. And with PDF generation, you can attach PDFs to email, and you can even bulk export all your submissions as PDF documents. Very useful if you want to archive. You might want to generate a CSV for archiving the data, but then if you want a way to review that data, you can generate PDFs for every single submission. So what are some of the other features included in the Webform module? Well, the Webform module provides all the features expected from an enterprise proprietary form builder, combined with the flexibility and openness of Drupal. So there's a lot of features out of the box, and you can customize them, and you can extend the Webform module and add features to it. And these are some of the features. We kind of walk through the drag and drop form builder. You can do multi-column layouts in your form using Flexbox. You can open your forms in modal dialogues. There's full support for conditional logic for your elements. You can schedule when a form's opening and closing. You can pre-populate values. Email handling remote posts we'll get back to. And with submissions, you can set limits on how many people can fill out the form, how many users. You can set up previews, auto-filling. You can allow people to save drafts. Auto-purge is if you want to not hold on to certain records after a certain time. Access controls, everything has access controls. So you can decide who can access what form or what element. And the last one is confirmation message, which I think people take for granted. But every possible confirmation message is supported. So this is the one I just showed you. Your message has been sent. But you can go into the settings confirmation tab, and you get this list of options. You can get a dedicated page, inline message at the top. You can open a modal. You can redirect to a URL. We're just going to do a modal. And I actually like modal dialogues with web forms because it kind of can simplify the user experience. So you scroll down, you hit send, and it reloads and just pops up a little message that your message has been sent. And you can customize the look and feel of all of that. And with elements, there's a lot of elements. And these are kind of the groupings of some of the elements. We have standard text elements, inputs, text areas, select menus, advanced HTML5, email addresses, and URL. And then stuff you'd expect like file uploads, signatures, buttons, ratings, image selections where you can pick images. And then you can even it works with the address module, so you can do addresses and entity references. On the right side, I'm kind of talking about enhancements. So you can select menus, support libraries like Select To or Chosen. You can have computed elements. There's tooltips and slide outs. Input masks are really helpful for phone numbers, word counters. Boy, it's a lot of stuff. Regex validation, once again, access controls, and you can even limit inputs to unique values. And there's a style guide. If you install the Webform examples module, you get a kitchen sink of everything, every element. We're going through and just showing buttons, every telephone inputs, text formats, down to the cute kittens that you can select, and you can change those images, or a signature element. There's also even just a terms of service to make your life a little easier. And there's Likert support. Now we're at entity references. Toward the bottom, the last one we're going to show is this composite elements here, which I'll get back to, but you also just get a style guide because you're seeing all the possible layouts, all the possible messages that'll be displayed. You can use this style guide for your designers and themers to look at the entire possibilities of the Webform module and customize it and create your own look and feel. And this is like zooming in on very specific features around labeling. So the Webform module supports all types of labeling around an input. What you're seeing here is everything turned on, from just a title to a tooltip, to a placeholder, to a description, to a more slide out. I don't recommend turning on all of these at once. The example use case for the more slide out that you see, I use it when I have a huge amount of text, or I need to describe something in 2 or 3 paragraphs, and you say, learn more about why you need to enter this information, and you hit the slide out, and they can see it, they can print it, they can cut and paste it. The links are clickable. It's a nice use case for that. But in the Webform module, I use tooltips heavily because I want to save space. And tooltips are great. That's a little question mark, because people only need to roll over them once. They read it. They never go back to it. So how do you get support for the Webform module? Well, there's documentation, cookbook, screencasts, available on Drupal.org. Drupal Answers is where you get support. Ask your questions and people will try to answer them and help you out. And then if you run into issues or you want to add a feature to the Webform module, you can come to the issue queue and post, the bug, the issue, or if you want a feature request, you can definitely post it there. And there are videos about every feature of the Webform module. And right now I'm just scrolling to the video about views integration, on how to integrate the views module, and it walks through all the steps required to add view support to the Webform module. So yeah, I'm showing all this to you to inspire you to build awesome forms. And we're switching to site builders, but I added this slide that if there's any questions now, you can post them and I can scan them and I can make notes about them and come back to them. If you're posting a question, just add a queue, and I'll even make a note in here. Add queue. Oh, and what happened is it didn't start scrolling. Spam control. I will get to spam control. Commerce. Okay. Commerce is an interesting one where I generally would recommend the Webform Commerce Order module. There's an add-ons tab, which I'll demo, which lists out all the possibilities. I know it's a lot because you're picking up commerce, and that's a big commitment, but it works really well. Wow, these questions are great, by the way. I need to pause and be like, these are awesome. Okay. I'm going to go through them, and I'll come back to ones that I can't. Complex multi-page forms. I just added a web form cards module that makes it even easier to add really complex, super fast multi-page forms. There's a performance issue with the current wizard implementation that will slow it down a little bit, and cards kind of fixes that, moving everything to the client. Scheduling appointments using web forms is one of my favorite things because I do healthcare. I have found with scheduling appointments, I've done a lot of third-party integration on my own, where you kind of have to write some custom code. There's no like out-of-the-box features, but you have to call APIs and get the data from the API, bring it into the web form. And you can alter everything from, you could have a drop-down menu that's available appointments and just use an API to populate it. Best practices with paragraphs is very tricky. Well, you can use a web form element in a paragraph. That works out really well. Paragraphs generally, if you have web form nodes enabled, the paragraph will move up to the web form node, which makes it a little easier to track. I know lots of people are doing it. I don't see the screen you're using for editing the form. Oh, Jesus, I lost that. God darn. Okay. I saw that. I hope that, can someone comment? Can you see when I'm doing a demo? Can you see my screen? It's working now because there's a lag. Thank you, Bo. There's a lag with that. Okay. These questions are awesome. I'm happy. I hope you guys realize how excited I am to be answering questions. I'm going to go to the end. If there's any issues with the presentation, you need to shoot them out now. Great question about motivation for contributing. I'll have to wait till the end to talk about that. The tooltips, actually, I do a ton of work on accessibility. So tooltips are a problem for touch interfaces and accessibility. There's all different behaviors around those tooltips, where if your keyboard accesses it, it opens. If your mouse goes over it, it doesn't open automatically. So that's kind of been taken care of. Salesforce integration has always been, yeah, Salesforce is a tricky one. There are a lot of Salesforce integration modules with lots of people approaching it differently. I offhand have been writing my Salesforce integrations on one-offs, just like I need to do, they give me an API endpoint and I call it directly. How to add custom select elements to web form fields, extending existing ones. I can talk about that and I'll make a note about that when we get to the technical. I'm going to look at this for 30 more seconds and then I got to go. Change option. Oh, John asked this question, is there an easy way to change options in one drop-down menu on the selection of another? There's a simple hierarchical select that uses taxonomy terms to do that. Out of the box, there's no immediate support for that. It's a to-do feature on my list, which is very tricky because the only way I see doing that is you have to have a spreadsheet powering. I'm going to show it like menu one, someone selects, and then the spreadsheet goes and says, oh, there's a second menu here, and then it loads that second menu. It's very tricky, but it's a feature that I've been meaning to add. Oh yeah, Salesforce questions. Ugh, sorry. Okay, I'm going to great amount of questions. I'm overwhelmed. Do existing web built from templates get updated? No, they do not get updated when you update the main template. It is a copy, so they work independently. If you want things to be synchronized, you want to create your own elements. Question, config splits, yes. Web forms and config splits is much cleaner. I use config split all the time and config ignore. There's a dedicated blog post about web form configuration management. I'm going to start going again. I went 2 minutes more, but we're fine on time. We got a half hour here, and I feel like it helps me while I'm going through this. So I'm going to breathe and say, let's talk about site builders. So how do you build awesome forms? Well, you learn from the examples and demos. I showed you the style guide. There's an example of a multi-step wizard when you turn on the web form examples module. And if you have the cards module installed, there'll be an example of the cards module. And there's also examples of multi-column layouts. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. And a lot of the advanced elements you can kind of explore. Click on them in the style guide and see how they work. The two that I want to talk about is computed elements and composites. And computed elements do calculations on the fly. So this is an example where I'm adding two numbers together and C is a computed element using Twig and Ajax to calculate two numbers. The bottom one was just selecting a user and seeing the user. If I go over, you see you have A plus B equals C, and when you go to C, it's a computed Twig element. You're looking at Twig. It's just Twig adding those two numbers together and saying, use Ajax. So as you're typing, it will start updating. Tokens are different in the sense of it's just going out and getting a piece of data. So you've selected a user and it's saying, well, let me get the user's email address now from that entity reference. I tend to use Twig more, but those tokens are very fast and performant and very simple. It's a good way to extract extra pieces of data. Like if you need to go to your sort, like let's say you attach a web form to a node. I want to grab a piece of data from that web form. The best example, do it all the time. Event titles. I need to get the event title that someone submitted a web form from, and I'll use a token, compute a token to grab that. And composite elements are multiple elements working together. So you create a composite and you can say it's first name, last name, date of birth. Out of the box, there's an address composite, a contact composite, a link composite, and gives you a nice way to just create a set of information. These are user profiles, and then you can preview it. It's very powerful for registration forms if you have multiple registrants. And you can even build custom options. So what this is, it's kind of like a web component where you're setting your HTML template. You're setting some CSS on what you want that HTML to look like. You can add some JavaScript. In this case, it's not. It's just simple HTML to generate buttons. Very similar to what's in the Webform module, but you can customize these completely on your own. What's more powerful is you can set an SVG, and it will take the markup of that SVG, extract the data ID and name, and generate a clickable map. This is the map of the United States. It's clickable. It's fully keyboard accessible with zooming. And you have full control over this. This feature was sponsored to do actually event planning where they wanted to let sponsors pick the tables at the convention center that they would be displaying at. So they needed a map of the convention center, and then people would click and select which area. And That is a ridiculously complex feature. Yes, this is recorded, Austin. Sorry, I'm jumping back and forth, but um, I'll come back to questions. Boy, so this is so important. I just showed you the most advanced feature possible. It's completely accessible. Accessible in the sense of there's a hidden select menu that screen readers will pick up on, so people who can't see can use the select menu. People with keyboard, using keyboard controls can tab through the entire map without a problem with using back and forth arrows or the tab key. So Drupal and the Webform module take accessibility really seriously. I think Drupal and Webform are some of the most accessible form builder and content management applications on the market. And I want to emphasize that by saying the back end is accessible. I love demoing it, but I'm not going to demo it. But I mean, the form builder works. No keyboard traps. You can tab through. I do it a lot sometimes. So what can you build using the Webform module? People start asking about, appointment requests, but I'll start off with saying you could do applications like college applications, job applications, event registration, meetup registrations, even user registrations. You can use Webform to create kind of your own little, user profiles too. Like you can have targeted forms for users where a user can only fill it out once. And then you can do online donations. It's pretty easy to add a payment handler or redirect to a payment service. In the templates, I have it in the Webform templates. I have a template for making an appointment online, just to kind of show my feelings of best practice. I actually wrote a bunch of blog posts about that for anyone who's doing healthcare. So I want to do a demo. So these are demos included in the Webform module. There's three or four, but the two I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to talk about the first one, which is an application evaluation system demo. And it's a pretty simple thing to wrap your head around. The demo is two forms working together. The first form is this application that someone fills out. So someone's filling out a college application, they enter in all their information. Then when they hit submit, it will generate 3 emails to people who are evaluators. And those evaluators can be linked to the submission that came in. Basically, they're looking at what the person just entered in the application, and at the bottom of that application is a very simple evaluation form. It's showing how to kind of glue two forms together to create rich applications. And the evaluators can fill out the evaluation, set a score, and they can actually see these results get aggregated, and you can do it that way. Event registration is that pattern where you have an event on your site and you want to let people to register for the events. And what I like about the event registration system demo is it walks through Webform nodes a little bit. So we're going to demo this. If I go back to the home page, I've turned on the Webform demo event registration module. It adds this little page called demo events. The idea is it generates 3 events that you can work with. And I'm going to click on the first event. And actually, I'm not going to go into the back end a lot, but for site builders to understand, it's showing how to grab on the Webform node. So this is an event registration, a form attached to an event node. And I'm pulling from that node the maximum number of users that could register for this one single event. This is also tracking the number of users. See the 10s being brought over. And I can click register. And it opens up the form. This is actually using computed tokens to pull those values from that node. I can fill it out. And by the way, these demos are meant to kind of be every possible feature you would need for an event registration system to kind of put it in there, and it helps me work through it. Because what I'm going to show you is a really advanced feature, which is option limits. So for a drop-down menu, I'm able to say, it's like an inventory system. How many shirts do I have for this event? Well, I have 6. I'm going to take an extra large shirt. If you had rooms or number of seats, you could limit the options. So you could say pick room A, B, or C and say how many people could fit in that room and track it. I'm going to hit register. It's going to reload and go back to the form. And also, I forgot to just mention it's using this feature to open the form in a modal dialog, which is fully supported in the UI. I really like this approach. When you don't know if the user needs to fill out the form, modal dialogs make it a lot easier. It's also more performant because I don't load an entire web form. I'm just loading a button that opens a web form. Now with the demo, I'll switch over to the results tab. we have our results, and I'll show the inventory management system, which is just showing you that one person picked an extra large shirt. You can customize this any way you want. That's pretty much it here. I will say there's this nice little share tab, which I'm just going to switch over to the slides and show you. This is a very recent feature, and I'll talk about it by just letting it go. So how do you share your web form? So you build this rich system, and this, okay, I want to make sure everyone can see the demo. I think Hopin locks up every once in a while, but I see people saying refresh, which is great. So the animated GIF here is showing you how to take the contact form and say, I want it to be placed on any site. And you could use JavaScript, an iframe, and this is a preview of it. When you see that gray box, that's a gray box. It's an iframe that can be placed on any website outside of Drupal. It opens up web forms to headless implementations. So you might have Drupal as the back end to a headless front, it's a headless implementation, and you're using Gatsby and you want to have a web form in there, you could actually embed that script or iframe in your generated Gatsby page and still use Drupal for web forms. It's an iframe, so your form is totally stable. A feature that I'm not going into here is you can actually apply any theme to that embedded web form. So you could have a dedicated, simplified, embedded web form theme. Personally, I would do that because you can go out and grab a theme like Claro and have this amazing form. Okay. So how do you extend the web form module? This is where I'm going to get to spam because I see people talking about it, which is a great discussion. So there's an add-on tab where I'm tracking every add-on available for the web form module. And spam is one of the big ones, and it's a dedicated group where you can be linked to the different options, which is like Honeypot, Clean Talk. Captcha is missing from that, but Captcha is fully supported. If I was going to give you my recipe without paying for stuff, because I actually think Clean Talk I haven't used, but conceptually that makes the most sense because it's a service that scans and monitors spam and catches it. But Honeypot and Captcha seem to work really well. I would say Honeypot works the best. You could get away with just using that alone. It is an ongoing challenge that everyone faces with spam. But also in the add-ons, there's examples of all the integrations with third parties, special elements. There's a lot going on in the community in extending the web form module. So we're switching to extending the web form module. So I'm going to go back through some questions. I literally am doing good. We're going to be done at 3 o'clock. I have 2 minutes to scan some questions. I think spam we talked about really well. I mean, with Captcha, it's important to say that you have a dedicated Captcha element that you can position right on the form. You can customize every single validation message. Can you customize validation error messages? Everything is customizable. Every message defaults, you can go in and tweak those. And let me see if I can get back here. We talk about tweaking it. If I go over to here, oops, sorry, by the way, I'm not on a web form. I'm on a node, which is fine. I'll go back here and just say, I'll walk through settings. So I feel like people get overwhelmed. There's a lot of configuration settings, but they're structured well where these are all the labels, how the form's displayed, and when someone brought up error messages, you get to validation. And you can say, see how you can enter a custom required message. It'll default to field X is required. If you say you want it unique, you can do a message. Everything has custom messages. I got another minute to go through questions. Wow, the queues are really helping. I'm going to tell everyone to start using them. Can I set up an external submit action on a web form to integrate with a payment gateway? Yes, you can do two things. You can actually make your forms completely headless in the sense of, not headless, back-endless would be a better way to put it. You can say, render the form, but when someone hits submit, send the action somewhere else. So you could point it to, if you need really high performance form submissions, you can actually point it to like a Node.js backend that's processing records a lot faster, where it goes into a MongoDB. The other way to do it is a remote post, which I'll demo, which is what most people are doing, is they turn off the saving of results in Drupal. And by the way, this is going to go into, I'm going to save it because I'm going to start and then I'm going to talk a lot about security and remote posts. because I think that kind of those things go hand in hand. I'm going to get this into a place that I can keep going. But for developers, what can you do with the Webform module? Every aspect of the Webform module is extendable and customizable with plugins and hooks. Plugins are small pieces of functionality that are swappable. This is really for site owners and builders just to understand that, yeah, these are reusable, standardized, and extendable components. So if you don't like how emails is being sent, you can extend that email handler and tweak it. These are the four main plugins. These are the four plugins in the Webform module. Elements have a plugin that wraps around Drupal's form API elements. I'll get to those in a little bit. Handler is what you saw with the emails going out. So when I send an email, it's being handled, and the handler sends the email. And variant is a new feature that allows you to tweak everything about a form to create A/B testing, segmentation, and personalization. And what's important, you can do conditional logic, just hide and show elements. But variants allow you to take it a step further where you could change the labels of your entire form. With personalization, if you know the example I would say with personalization is, if you know a patient is filling out the form, you could phrase your questions one way. How are you feeling today? If you know a caregiver is filling out the form, you could rephrase the question to say, how is the patient feeling today? While not having to create two forms or two user experiences. And A/B testing is, I'm going to demo that. That's a good quick one. Exporters I'll skip over because we looked at it. It's how you export data. I'm not showing a lot of code here, but I like to show this code to be like, you can create your own elements. There's a ton of modules, but a lot of them are examples. There's a Webform example composite module. And this is the example of the Webform example composite plugin. And it's showing you really the two key pieces to creating your own. Well, there's three pieces to it. You have to create the form API element instance, which you can copy and paste from the example module. But then, and that's what we're looking at here, where you're basically saying, how is that composite displayed with the theme? And then you're saying what elements are going into that composite. And we're using very simple form API to say first name and last name. And you could extend this to have your own elements added to the composite. And with handlers, we talked about email. On that event registration demo, I didn't demo it, but it also shows how to use a scheduled email handler. So you can send out a scheduled email one day before the event is supposed to happen. Or you could remind them if they don't finish, you can, if someone fills out a draft of a form, like a college application, and saves it, you can send them a reminder. Remote post is this idea of taking the data and putting it to a third party. Actions and settings are ways to conditionally tweak a web form or a submission. So with actions, you could say someone entered, this is an emergency, and you can flag a submission. With settings, you could say someone said, I'm providing feedback, or they pick a certain option in a drop-down menu, and you could change the confirmation message conditionally based on whatever. You're basically taking that web form submission information and changing how the web form is going to behave. Most common example is changing the confirmation message or redirecting to a URL. And remote post. So this is a demo of remote posts where we're going in and adding this remote post handler. And I'm going to just send it to a dummy site. And this is, while this is happening, I'm going to cut and paste the URL. I'm going to go down, show you the data that's going out. I'm going to go hit debug. You have to enable debugging when you're trying out handlers. It helps a lot because I'm going to do a test and it's going to fail. And this is a good opportunity for me once this fails. So the goal is it's going to send it out. It doesn't because it's a 404 error, but you see the simple data that's going out to the third party. You have full control over how that data is going to look. But this is a good opportunity to walk through a pattern that people are doing in the Webform module around data security. First, you can encrypt data going into the database. So you could use the Webform encrypt module and encrypt that data. That's one way to secure data. The other way to do it, and I strongly recommend this, is, listen, data should be in a bank. When I say that, I mean, like, if I'm collecting patient data, I don't think it should be in Drupal. It should be in a secure place, like a bank. Or, let's put it in better terms, Salesforce. And what you can do is use a remote post handler to post that data to Salesforce. And you can turn off the saving of that data in Drupal. So that data is ephemeral. As they're clicking through the form, nothing's saved to the database. Nothing's written in the session or anything like that, so that when they hit submit, that data goes off to Salesforce, and now it's in a secure place. I'm using the word bank more and more because I think non-technical people start to understand that, like take your valuables and put it in the right place. The other part is you can turn off the saving of results, or, and I've seen this is the pattern I've seen a lot too, is you purge the submissions after a week. What that does is it solves a problem of what if Salesforce goes down? Well, you still have a week's worth of data in Drupal that's automatically purged. Every hour it runs, you can hold on for a day or not. That covers a lot about data security. So variants, one of my favorite features, super a little complex and it's for advanced use cases, but okay, a variant is an alternate instance of a web form that adjusts settings, elements, or behaviors to yield a better result. So variants will just allow you to do A/B testing. I'm basically taking a form and saying, put all the labels in line. I can view it. There's inline. Then I can go in and say, let's create a B variant where it's not inline, but actually I'm going to show everything using, instead of drop downs, I'm going to use radios. And you can do A/B testing and get the stats and see which one's more successful and apply it to your site. This is the most simple implementation of variants. On the results download, we've seen this. It allows you to export the data. I'm going to keep going. I got 9 minutes. I'm going to fast forward a little bit, which I think is fine because I've answered most questions I've ever answered in a session. You have hooks. There's 2 types of hooks I'll bring up. You have form alter and form element alter hooks, and you can alter entities. Your web forms and submissions are entities. And the last hook I like a lot is hook web form handler invoke alter. That literally means you can alter anything happening in a web form. Right before the email goes out, you could call that and be like, oh, an email's about to go out, let me do something to it. It's an incredibly powerful hook. And check out the webform API.php for documentation on the hooks. So there's 2 key things developers should walk away from this presentation is that the Webform module is really extending Drupal's form API, which I love dearly, and that the Webform module's APIs are reusable. And just to bring people up to speed on form API, it's about building a form, validating that data when someone hits submit, and then you actually submit that data, you process it. And I'm bringing this up because I want to illustrate a little more code on how you can leverage Webform APIs in your custom code. So this is a form, and it's just an entity autocomplete. And at the bottom here, I have process elements. This is calling the web form process element helper manager. And I'm also adding a class and a library that prevents someone from losing data with unsaved changes. And what it does is it creates this really advanced widget that you see in the web form module. And you can go in and add and remove elements. It's not something provided by Core, but it is provided by the web form module. And there's the warning that you're about to lose your data. And for a demo of this, there's even a tool to do it, and I've got a minute left. Well, I want to take more questions. So I'm going to go in and show you, ready? There's an example here. You can install this module, and you get this kitchen sink like the style guide, but it's also showing you that this is exportable. And when I say export, this export is the configuration behind the form. This is Drupal's configuration management. But you can convert your web form to form API form. And what it's doing, it's a module generator. It's generating a module with a route, is a path where you're creating an admin configuration form, and then it takes that form, that web form, gives it the helpers it needs, which is not many. It's the web form token manager and the element manager. And then it starts generating the PHP code. Basically, so you could cut and paste. If you want to have checkboxes with descriptions, you could cut and paste this snippet and get side-by-side checkboxes with descriptions, with help slide outs. It gives you a starting point. So if you like a feature in the Webform module, you could use this to be like, how do I get this feature out? I mean, it's a lot of stuff going in here, but it also illustrates if you like Code Mirror, Webform module includes a Code Mirror editor, and you can pull that out too. Yeah, David just said this is amazing. Yeah, I had to do this because I was like, how do you show developers what the heck's going on here, and how do you inspire them to be like, yes, you can extend the heck out of this. I started doing this a lot. And one last thing, I'm going to scroll to the end, is it gives you basically the YAML that you would need to see your configuration. And I'm going to, bummer. Sorry about the Slack thing. I hated when that happened, and no one's going to ping me anymore. But it gives you a sample configuration file to get started with. Okay, we're near the end. Things that are not supported require things that require submissions, or like web form specific, multi-step submission displays, handlers and variants, because you're decoupling, you're taking that web form and converting it to form API. So it's not in the web form module anymore. Access controls, totally not part of it. You have to write them yourself. And PDF generation is very tricky. You'd have to write your own PDF implementation for your backend. But there are some APIs that I'm going to call out that people should just pay attention to. All the modal dialog support are all reusable APIs. There's utility classes. You could dive into those. You can use them. If you need to take a form and make it do AJAX, there's an AJAX, a web form AJAX form trait, which you can just add to any form API form and have it do an AJAX submit. There's a whole series of utility classes. Some of them are just as simple as manipulating arrays. Some are real helpers for manipulating forms. One of them's the web form helper, which will literally take this massive form and flatten it for you into a simple array that you could then pull in and out any element. If you're doing testing, there's a browser test trait. And the last one is really cool, and no one knows about it, is there's a test directory, which people are familiar with, but in that is a files directory. This is a sample of every possible file you'd ever need to upload. I use it whenever I'm testing any application now that requires a file upload. So I'm at 4 minutes left. I want to emphasize help improve APIs by contributing code and ideas. Get involved, report a bug, request a feature, write documentation, write a case study about Webform module if you want to do me a favor. And that's it. You can learn more about me at jrockowitz.com. A lot of things people ask me about, you could post on Stack Exchange and people will point to blog posts about configuration management for web forms. Haven't written a blog post about spam. Other people have. You should provide feedback. There's a link right here for the SurveyMonkey thing at the top in gray. We have 3 minutes left. I'm going to scroll upwards and go, okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay, I love the test submission feature, pre-fills the data. By the way, you can customize that test data and do anything you want with it. It's under advanced. This is great because I can just run through stuff that's just ridiculous. Let's see what else. Whether elements should be added to core. This is very tricky. I think core needs to rethink form API and they might have to go in a different direction. Like Webform module probably needs to sit outside of core for a while because form API is starting to show its wear and tear, and that might come up where we might need to rethink how we're building forms. Okay, there's questions about hosting. I can't really say that. Best way to, so remote post, here's the problem. I can't predict API keys or authentication. The best way to secure it is use Salesforce, use OAuth, and extend the remote post handler and wrap that code around it, that you're doing the OAuth authentication before you do the remote post. For new element created by a custom module, yes, you'd have to create a, like that's why I'm doing the Form API export, because what that's doing is using the configuration management system to write that data to YAML, but you could reuse a lot of that in any aspect of core. Wow, I know I talk fast, but there's a lot of questions. Recently got email notifications and a few months. Jennifer, you gotta post a more specific question about email notifications. I can scroll back. How do you extend the club registration to posting a new club? Oh, Antibot is a really good recommendation. That's another way to protect against spam. Is there a way, oh yes, is there a way to send different email messages based on different values? Yes, you can basically, I get a minute to demo something else. And if I go into templates, feedback, settings, handlers, email confirmation. So I can send the email to the type of feedback someone's giving me, and you could say which email addresses the comments, report a bug, or questions go to. And that's available on all of them. I feel like I answered a ton of questions. Yes, okay, I'm gonna go to the end, say, I wanna show my final screen, say questions. Oh, the share option. Thank you for pointing that out about the share options. It's a new thing. There's a dedicated blog post about it. So if you look up Webform Share, um, you need to enable the Webform Share module. And by default, sharing is not turned on. You have to explicitly say, I want to turn on sharing for this Webform, and it's under the General tab. So if I'm here and I go to the General tab, and this feedback form I want to share, I go over to Share and say Share. Form sharing enabled for Webform nodes. It needs to be restricted because I don't want someone pulling a web form off someone else's site, to be honest. I want to make it really hard. And this is where you can set the theme. You can go in and globally say share all forms if you're building that type of application. We're at time. Quiz question with grading. So I can keep talking. I shared the slides before early on. By the way, these slides are shared in the Webform module because I do that. Like this is part of, if you go to videos, you'll see this. I feel like I'm not getting kicked out of here for 5 minutes. And of course I'll sit and answering questions, but everyone could leave. And there's 179 people in the room gradually, so I'll answer. Quiz questions with grading. There's a dedicated Webform quiz module. I haven't used it. I think it might need some work. It's very tricky to do because quizzes, I think you have to create dedicated quiz elements and let people enhance those. God, it's a very tricky problem because options in Drupal are very limited to name value pairs. And what you need is name value pairs with a score. So there hasn't been a canonical solution. It's something I've wanted to spend time on. Let's see. Is it possible? Integrate maps like high charts. You would have to write custom code. What map integration we have is the GeoCompete there's a deprecated GeoCompete location add-on, but there's also support for Algolia. And I think I can show that to you by the way, if I type location, let's see, let's look at this. Oh, you can turn on the map for, you can get a map. It's pretty limited. It's really like using these location modules allow you to do autocomplete. That's the basic out of the box concept, which is most use cases. Someone starts typing an address and you want to get an accurate address with longitude and latitude. Anything else? Oh yeah, the quiz module. Well, there's a Webform quiz module, and someone kind of came up with their own solution. So check it out. Thanks, Gabor. Let's see. Oh, the key module is really cool. I got to say, that's an insanely great module and probably should have been done by default on most sites. Oh, how will you get funding to develop so many? With the funding of the feature, I wrote a blog post, and sometimes people reach out to me where they need a feature and they're willing to sponsor it. There's an open collective, which I promote in the Webform module. I decided not to promote too heavily here. My day job is sponsoring a lot of stuff right now because that card stuff was totally for work. I do give a shout out to Memorial Sloan Kettering when I write the blog posts. I'm not supporting myself off most of these features, but it's nice when someone sponsors it. Definitely inspires me to do a lot of work. Oh my God, Bill Crum, H5P is insanely cool. It is one of the coolest things. Oh, Eric, thank you for sitting through. I cannot, H5P is crazy. I installed it. I was like, oh my God, I just installed this whole new framework that has all this potential. Yeah, you just have to go to the H5P website and keep in mind it's not tied to Drupal. It's just an open source framework to build little dynamic widgets. Yeah, the Drupal code's a little rough, but I think they do a SaaS-based solution where you can embed it on your site. It solved a lot of problems for my clients where they really needed it. Wow. Yeah. Is there a module for surveys? Well, This does survey. You can definitely build surveys. It's the whole aggregate quizzes, scoring. That's the hard part. Also, the analyst. I'm not doing a lot of data analyzation. There's a dedicated web form analyze module. That's Rosundo who's asking the question, and you can kind of build charts and stuff like that. By the way, that kind of goes to the argument of Salesforce. My argument is web forms should just build great forms, collect the data, and send it to the right place. I think you get better results when you send it to a party like Survey or Google Analytics, or even into a spreadsheet that then you open up in Tableau or some service like that. Well, I see there's 182 people here. Are there any more questions? I've gone 6 minutes over, which I think is fine. Oh, I lost my. I'll end. Oh, I talked about variants. There's not much planned for them because they're meeting my needs, and they're plugins, so they're extendable. Jonathan's just asking about them. I think they address most of my use cases right now. When a field is changed or deleted in the future, can we still download the old submissions? No. There's this hack. Okay, Alex asked, oh no, Ning asked this question. There's a hack where you could use access controls to suppress the element from being seen. So you could just say, don't let anyone ever see this element. You can even use, if you really want to be hardcore, you can go in, and I have not made this available because I think it will confuse the heck out of people. But keep in mind, so we have a name company. I hate this. I don't want to use it anymore, but I don't want to lose the data. I go over to access. Well, no, advanced. You can go to access, and it's a lot more complex. But then I could say access equals false. This is an old Drupal hack. And what this is going to do is pull this out. Won't render it. It's gone. And it doesn't get rendered in too many places. Let's see. Yep. Got pulled out of here. Gets pulled out of all the results. I didn't expose that in the UI because it gets dangerous. But people are using it. Oh, can you tag questions with taxonomy terms? Yes. Well, taxonomy terms like entity references are fully supported. So there's a taxonomy term element that you can display a list of terms. You are able to tweak these forms. There's an example of how you can go in and tweak, when I say tweak these forms, the element edit form. And if you needed taxonomy terms added, you could add your own grouping to it. It's something that you want to look at the example for, and it'll show you how to do it. You can also strip out feature. You can strip out, if you don't need min lengths, max length, you can strip them out. A lot of people still in. I get people are getting lunch too. The BOF thing is, I am tapped out on time. Bo, if you want to ping me on Slack to set up a BOF, I'm open to it. If you feel there's a certain discussion topic, if you want to help me initiate it, I will make sure to be there. So just ping me, Bo Shipley. Ping me on Slack. I just need help. I'm kind of tapped out with all these other things I'm working on. Is it possible to open multiple dialogue with Recaptcha enabled on a single page? I think there's a bug with that. There's a bug with Captcha and Ajax. That's the problem. No, with the modal opening. So you have Captcha, the modal opens, that's using Ajax, and Captcha's got a little bit of a problem. So that's something to be aware of. Oh, well, form styling and conditional submissions. Well, conditions, yeah, I didn't spend a lot of time on conditions because it's basically, you have a UI where you can select the state, whether it's visible or not, what element, what's the trigger. And the, yeah, it's tricky. With handlers, you can, conditional, well, with handlers, they can be triggered conditionally. So you could take a submission, you could disable it. I don't think you could purge data and lose it. Form styling, I mean, that's why there's the style guide, and you can add your own custom classes to every element. This is very advanced, but it helps. I do this a lot to nudge an element into place, or if I need something else. Oh, there's a question about web form share. So what I'm going to do is, Webform share. Sorry, I'm pivoting because I need to get this URL. Okay. Oh yeah, thank you for bringing the blog post, Bo. That was what I was literally going to. Field API support. So here's the problem. Field API can't handle hundreds of elements, hundreds of fields, and hundreds of forms. It falls apart. It gets overwhelmed. There's a module called the content creator. So if you want, I can't really get the module. If someone could look it up, it's in the add-ons. But the idea is that you'd have your web form existing in its own little space. It's performant, but when someone hits submit, you can push some of the web form fields to Field API on a node. And that kind of is the best of both worlds, where you're getting all that rich data, and then you can have fields. Oh, anyone know if comments will be available when we rewatch these? I don't think comments will be available. So great, Jonathan just brought that up. I wish, well, if you post feedback in the survey, I don't know. I don't think, no, we're not going to get that from SurveyMonkey. Yeah, I'm sorry that Field API support ain't happening until Drupal. Oh, by the way, after Dries' presentation, Drupal 11, not 10. Any other questions? I mean, it's great we have the room. God, I covered a lot of stuff. Yeah, I think it's good to promote my blog. So there's definitely blog posts on a lot of topics that people are asking. Making me feel like I need to find a way to, maybe I'll just put it in the web form module finally. Be like, here are some blog recommended reading. Yeah, you just got to pull the links off. Oh, the documentation has links to every single thing that's happening. Like if you go to the documentation, there's a list of all the module add-ons and all the blog posts ever written. So if you look in this massive list of all the spam articles, you can see it. Thanks, Chad. Well, this is kind of great. We didn't get kicked out of the room. We should have been like, someone should have been standing next to me staring at me. Okay, one more question. You got me. If you keep asking, I'll basically put a timer on, and after a minute, I'll get off. Is there a way to make a handler display an error page in case of an exception? Yes. Well, wait. Yes and no. Let me think. It would display an error and stop the submission. If the handler function fails. So there's been some talk in the remote post handler. I don't think it fails the processing, but I do want to show that it's something we've been thinking about. So if I go in and add a remote post handler to this, in the advanced tab, it's looking at status codes. So you can give custom response messages, but down here, you can say add, and you're saying, well, if it's a bad gateway, display this error message. Oh, and then if there's an error, it can redirect to a custom URL. So this is in the remote post. It's kind of very specific. But I think this is the only place where you really can get errors, unless you're writing custom code that has errors, and then you've got that problem there. Oh, it still displays, yeah. It still displays the success page. It doesn't fail. You'd have to go in, you'd have to create an example, and you'd have to look at it. One of the problems is, I will say, you're asking this question, like it still succeeds, because to send a remote post, you're going to want to save a submission before you send the remote post. It's like a chicken or the egg. I want to have most people want this, is what's going to be the ID in Drupal that goes to Salesforce. So you save the submission, you get the ID, and it goes out, sends it to Salesforce with the submission ID or the UUID. And it helps a lot. So that's the problem. Yeah, you can't fail before. You'd have to write custom code and in the validation callback to check if things are working. And that's definitely how I've done some Salesforce integration. So I don't need the submission ID for Salesforce. So I basically have a validate callback that's like, will this work? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I know it's very specific, but it's fine to ask another question. Um, any sort of data layer that's a push. Luke, has there been any demand to add any sort of data layer support that pushes submission info? Pushes submission info to where? Um, keeping in mind that the storage mechanism for submissions are swappable. Oh, like a Google data layer. I mean, the way handlers work, yeah, I'm struggling with this one because I think it's a great question. Is the ideal scenario for me would be literally, yeah, like where you don't have the data going into Drupal and you're pushing it to some other data. I'm going to use the word data layer like Google or Salesforce, where literally it's read write. Besides remote posting the data, you can, if someone's viewing all the submissions, they're calling that. No one's done it. It feels like a really important requirement that's slowly happening is, you know, build the form using Drupal, but the data is just not in Drupal at all. So, and then you leverage everything else. And I don't have a better answer for that question then. I mean, what's great is everything's kind of swappable in Drupal. Are there any more questions? I mean, you guys should go to the next session, which I think is starting. Oh, I lost track of the schedule. Okay, I'm wrapping up. We got 60 people left. I'm going to assume half of those people are getting sandwiches and eating them and left their windows open. Thank you all for attending. This was great. It was by far the most fun I've had with a remote. Now I know how to do these remote sessions. That's it. It's all about questions. I'm not doing it again with the presentation without questions. It's just way better, way more enjoyable. Thanks everyone. Yeah, I know I'm going back and forth because I'm looking at the questions scanning here. Okay, we're dropping off. I'm kicking everyone out. I don't know. I don't feel like I want to be like rude. All right, we did 17 minutes more questions. Okay, guys, I will see you on the Slack channel. You can ping me. Anything else? Thanks again.